Diocletian, born Diocles, was a Roman emperor from 284 to 305. Born to a family of low status in the Roman province of Dalmatia, Diocletian rose through the ranks of the military to become cavalry commander to the Emperor Carus. After the deaths of Carus and his son Numerian on campaign in Persia, Diocletian was proclaimed emperor. The title was also claimed by Carus' other surviving son, Carinus, but Diocletian defeated him in the Battle of the Margus. Diocletian's reign stabilized the empire and marks the end of the crisis of the 3rd century. He appointed fellow officer Maximian as Augustus' co-emperor in 286. Diocletian delegated further on 1 March 293, appointing Galerius and Constantius as Caesar's junior co-emperors. Under this tetrarchy, or rule of 4, each emperor would rule over a quarter division of the empire. Diocletian secured the empire's borders and purged it of all threats to his power. He defeated the Sarmatians and Carpi during several campaigns between 285 and 299, the Alemanni in 288, and usurpers in Egypt between 297 and 298. Galerius, aided by Diocletian, campaigned successfully against Sassanid Persia, the empire's traditional enemy. In 299 he sacked their capital, Ctesiphon. Diocletian led the subsequent negotiations and achieved a lasting and favorable peace. Diocletian separated and enlarged the empire's civil and military services and reorganized the empire's provincial divisions, establishing the largest and most bureaucratic government in the history of the empire. He established new administrative centers in Nicomedia, Mediolanum, Antioch, and Trier, closer to the empire's frontiers than the traditional capital at Rome had been. Building on 3rd century trends towards absolutism, he styled himself an autocrat, elevating himself above the empire's masses with imposing forms of court ceremonies and architecture, bureaucratic and military growth, constant campaigning, and construction projects increased the state's expenditures and necessitated a comprehensive tax reform. From at least 297 on, imperial taxation was standardized, made more equitable, and levied at generally higher rates. Not all of Diocletian's plans were successful. The edict on maximum prices, his attempt to curb inflation via price controls, was counterproductive and quickly ignored. Although effective while he ruled, Diocletian's tetrarchic system collapsed after his abdication under the competing dynastic claims of Maxentius and Constantine, sons of Maximian and Constantius respectively. The Diocletianic persecution, the empire's last, largest, and bloodiest official persecution of Christianity, did not destroy the empire's Christian community. Indeed, after 324 Christianity became the empire's preferred religion under its first Christian emperor, Constantine. In spite of these failures and challenges, Diocletian's reforms fundamentally changed the structure of Roman imperial government and helped stabilize the empire economically and militarily, enabling the empire to remain essentially intact for another 100 years despite being near the brink of collapse in Diocletian's youth. Weakened by illness, Diocletian left the imperial office on 1 May 305, and became the first Roman emperor to abdicate the position voluntarily. He lived out his retirement in his palace on the Dalmatian coast tending to his vegetable gardens. His palace eventually became the core of the modern-day city of Split. Early life. Diocletian was born near Salona in Dalmatia, sometime around 244. His parents named him Diocles, or possibly Diocles Valerius. The modern historian Timothy Barnes takes his official birthday, the 22nd of December, as his actual birth date. Other historians are not so certain. Diocles' parents were of low status, and writers critical of him claimed that his father was a scribe or a freedman of the senator Anullinus, or even that Diocles was a freedman himself. The first 40 years of his life are mostly obscure. The Byzantine chronicler John Zonaras states that he was Dux Mosii, a commander of forces on the lower Danube. The often unreliable Historia Augusta states that he served in Gaul, but this account is not corroborated by other sources and is ignored by modern historians of the period. The first time Diocletian's whereabouts are accurately established, in 282. He was made by the newly Emperor Carus commander of the Protectorus Domestici, the elite cavalry force directly attached to the imperial household, a post that earned him the honor of a consulship in 283. As such, he took part in Carus's subsequent Persian campaign. Death of Numerian. Carus's death, amid a successful war with Persia and in mysterious circumstances, he was believed to have been struck by lightning, left his sons Numerian and Carinus as the new Augusta. Carinus quickly made his way to Rome from his post in Gaul as imperial commissioner and arrived there by January 284, becoming legitimate emperor in the west. Numerian lingered in the east. The Roman withdrawal from Persia was orderly and unopposed. The Sassanid king Bahram II could not field an army against him as he was still struggling to establish his authority. By March 284, Numerian had only reached Emesa in Syria. By November, only Asia Minor. In Emesa he was apparently still alive and in good health. He issued the only extant rescript in his name there, but after he left the city, his staff, including the prefect Aper, reported that he suffered from an inflammation of the eyes. He traveled in a closed coach from then on. When the army reached Bithynia, some of the soldiers smelled an odor emanating from the coach. They opened its curtains, and inside they found Numerian dead. Both Eutropius and Aurelius Victor describe Numerian's death as a murder. Aper officially broke the news in Nicomedia in November. Numerianus generals and tribunes called a council for the succession, and chose Diocles as emperor, in spite of Aper's attempts to garner support. On 20 November 284, the army of the east gathered on a hill 5 kilometers outside Nicomedia. The army unanimously saluted Diocles as their new Augustus, and he accepted the purple imperial vestments. He raised his sword to the light of the sun and swore an oath disclaiming responsibility for Numerian's death. He asserted that Ape had killed Numerian and concealed it. In full view of the army, Diocles drew his sword and killed Aper. According to the Historia Augusta, he quoted from Virgil while doing so. Soon after Aper's death, Diocles changed his name to the more Latinate Diocletianus, in full Gaius Aurelius Valerius Diocletianus. Conflict with Carinus after his accession. Diocletian and Lucius Caesarius Bassus were named as consuls and assumed the fasces in place of Carinus and Numerianus. Bassus was a member of a senatorial family from Campania, a former consul and proconsul of Africa, chosen by Probus for signal distinction. He was skilled in areas of government where Diocletian presumably had no experience. Diocletian's elevation of Bassus as consul symbolized his rejection of Carinus government in Rome, his refusal to accept second-tier status to any other emperor, and his willingness to continue the long-standing collaboration between the empire's senatorial and military aristocracies. It also tied his success to that of the Senate, whose support he would need in his advance on Rome. Diocletian was not the only challenger to Carinus' rule. The usurper Aurelius Julianus, Carinus Corrector Venetiae, took control of northern Italy and Pannonia after Diocletian's accession. Julianus minted coins from the mint at Sistra declaring himself as emperor and promising freedom. It was all good publicity for Diocletian, and it aided in his portrayal of Carinus as a cruel and oppressive tyrant. Julianus' forces were weak, however, and were handily dispersed when Carinus' armies moved from Britain to northern Italy. As leader of the United East, Diocletian was clearly the greater threat. Over the winter of 284–85, Diocletian advanced west across the Balkans. In the spring, sometime before the end of May, his armies met Carinissa across the river Margus in Moesia. In modern accounts, the site has been located between the Mons Aureus and Viminacium, near modern Belgrade, Serbia. Despite having the stronger, more powerful army, Caranus held the weaker position. His rule was unpopular, and it was later alleged that he had mistreated the Senate and seduced his officers' wives. It is possible that Flavius Constantius, the governor of Dalmatia and Diocletian's associate in the household guard, had already defected to Diocletian in the early spring. When the Battle of the Margus began, Carinissa prefect Aristobulus also defected. In the course of the battle, Caranus was killed by his own men. Following Diocletian's victory, both the western and the eastern armies acclaimed him Augustus. Diocletian exacted an oath of allegiance from the defeated army and departed for Italy.